This hack tip is brought to you by Bitbucket by Atlassian. Welcome to HakTip, the show where we break down concepts, tools, and techniques for hackers, gurus, and IT ninjas. I'm your host, Shannon Morris, and today we are discussing the differences between ifconfig and IP. Now, before we get into that, for the past decade or so, I have been using Linux mostly the same way. Much of the commands that I have memorized have been around for a lot longer than I have known about them, but the past few years have come with a shift in what commands you can use to access information via your terminal. This is really exciting because, well, honestly, because it keeps me learning and it keeps me in business because I keep having things to talk about on HakTip, which honestly is very nice because I like my job. Some would argue that these older commands are deprecated, and per the terminology of deprecated, that is true. But I would argue that it's still really necessary to know what these commands mean. Why is that? Now, while they may not be as useful for home users, many different commands that you see are still useful for businesses, for IoT devices, or for headless systems that require older operating systems. Unfortunately, not everyone updates their systems as often as we do. So while we can use the newer commands, not everybody else can. So I think it's important to not only know what's new and what's useful, but also what older machines are using, or else you're going to run into some problems. I realize that my opinion is not necessarily that popular because much of these commands are no longer maintained, and that's perfectly fine. You can disagree if you want, but please be respectful about it whenever you're debating this with your peers. Now, one of these newer commands that we have seen is IP, which can be used instead of some tools available under net tools. Now, you may be familiar with net tools. In fact, I know you are because this includes different commands such as iwconfig, ifconfig, route, which I showed you a couple weeks ago, and other ones such as this. So you've already seen us discuss a lot of these on HakTips already. It's the package of tools that I began my Linux journey on, and honestly, it's the one that I'm more familiar with, but I usually just default to them, even though I know that other new ones exist, just because I've had them memorized for so long. Now, IP is the different one. It's generally pre-installed on Ubuntu machines nowadays, like the one that I'm using right here. It is a part of IP Route 2 util package, and it is considered to be much more powerful than ifconfig. But you may be wondering, why is that? IP is organized onto layer 2 and layer 3 of the OSI model. So those would be data link and network link, also known as the link layer and the IP layer of the networking stack. So this is the OSI model, and we explain this over on HakTip 116. So check that out if you've never seen it before. The other thing you should probably know about IP is that it uses a lot of the same configurations and can do the same things as the older commands. Now, before we get into some examples, I do want to show you a really useful little cheat sheet in case you are a Red Hat user. You can check that out in the show notes. I've linked it down there. Also, make sure to check out the man page for IP, as you can find a lot of detailed information in here about which options that you can use for this new command. And some of them are slightly different, so it's important to check these out. All right, after the break, I'm going to jump into some examples. Let's be honest, your code is your world. You create it, you tweak it, and you lovingly obsess over it every single day. So picking the right repository management tool is super important. Only the best for your code. Same with me, only the best for my code. That's why the team at Atlassian created Bitbucket. Bitbucket is the Git solution for professional teams helping over 5 million developers build with a purpose. Bitbucket gives teams of all sizes free, that's right, again, I said free, private repositories with state-of-the-art features like the world's best pull request algorithm, built-in continuous delivery, and integrations with your favorite tools like Docker, AWS, and Azure. Plus, you get Jira integration, since it is from Atlassian, giving your team everything you need to take your code from concept to customer. We've used Bitbucket here to share private code and collaborations with each other so that the code is so perfect before we ever release it into the wild. Bitbucket is for the code that takes us to Mars. It's for the code that decodes the human genome, or it drives your next car. Or for us InfoSec people, maybe it's for your next InfoSec tool. You can visit bitbucket.org/forthecode to start your free account. That's bitbucket.org/forthecode. Try Bitbucket today. What will your code do? All right, it's time for those examples. First off, we're going to review ifconfig. which looks like that. Of course, if you have other networking protocols, you will see those show up here as well. And then we have IP. So you type in IP A, so just space and A, and then you'll get kind of the same information. So ifconfig is only going to show you the enabled interfaces, while IP will show you all of them at the same time. So that's a super interesting little extra tidbit to remember. Also, previously I showed you how to change to promiscuous mode. So you type in sudo ifconfig. For me, I'm using WLP58S0. No, it does not autocomplete, just in case you're wondering, and promisc. And that would change me over to promiscuous mode after I type in my password. So now if I check ifconfig again, you'll notice I'm in promiscuous mode right there. In case I want to change it back, I can use the same thing with a dash in front of promiscuous or promisc. Now with the IP command, you type in sudo IP link set dev WLP58S0 or whatever yours is called, and then promisc on or off. So now if I type in IP tac A, you will see that I'm in promiscuous mode, and of course I can change that back by typing in off. You can also do the same command to turn on multicast mode as well, with the option all multi, all one word, ALLMULTI, to change that to a multicast. Now to disable or enable an interface, you can also do the same thing similarly. Now first I could type in ifconfig WLP58S0 down, or with the IP command, I can type in IP link set WLP. Oh, look at that, it auto-completed. Guys, I'm gonna use it forever now. Okay, and then you can type in up or down at the end of that command to bring that interface up or down, and that's it, so pretty easy there. And the last one that I wanted to share is if you are adding a specific IP address to an interface. So for example, with ifconfig, I would type in ifconfig WLP58S0, and then I could either add or delete with del, and then whatever my IP address is. So for here, it would be 10.73.31. I'll just use an example 123, and then that would add or delete the IP address. And then for IP, you would type in IP A, add or delete, del for delete, 10.73.31.123 for my example IP, dev dev, and then whatever the IP is, and that one does not autocomplete, so WLP58S0. And lastly, this one isn't necessarily a comparison to ifconfig, but with IP you can also use the route command, and it's going to show you a little bit of different data there. So instead of route, which looks like that, I would type in IP route show, and that is going to show me a little bit more information here for my routing table. So there's a little extra tip for you about IP. That's pretty much it that I wanted to show you on today's episode, but be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/hack5, and hit the like button if you got some good info out of this episode. Until then, I want to hear your feedback. You can comment below, and be sure to check out our sister show, Hack5, for more great stuff just like this. I'll be there reminding you to trust your technolust.